let's talk mainstream media smearing progressive media. Because it's always interesting to me. There's always the, kind of like the subtle smearing by establishment media of more independent anti-war media. When I was on the road covering the campaign for the Young Turks, I was always kind of looked at as kind of like, oh, one of those from the Young Turks, one of those, other media people, or like, oh, one of those like activists pretending to be a journalist, because the CNN and MSNBC and New York Times reporters and all these people that are on the road covering campaigns or whatever they're covering, by default, they're kind of arrogant. And they look down at people like me, or people like Jimmy Dore, or people like Kyle Kalinske, or people like Jamarl Thomas, or people like Lee Camp. But now it's gone beyond that. Now they are basically trying to issue propaganda and smear people that are independent commentators or independent journalists. Essentially, they're smearing those people who are basically asking very valid questions and pointing out very valid concerns about issues like war. So let's see. CNN wrote a piece. Again, I was away over the weekend, so I didn't get to this, but here we go. CNN ran a piece. They called it exclusive. YouTube ran ads from hundreds of brands on extremist channels. And basically, YouTube wrote ads from over 300 companies and organizations, including tech giants, major retailers, newspapers, and government agency, ran on YouTube channels promoting white nationalists, Nazis, pedophilia, conspiracy theories, and North Korean propaganda, a CNN investigation has found. And, they listed the companies like Adidas, Amazon, Cisco, Facebook, Hershey, Hilton, LinkedIn, Mozilla, Netflix, and a couple others. And, basically they are citing that these companies, without knowing it, ran ads on, let's look at some of the shows they cite. Nissan, for example, said, "We are shocked Nissan advertising has been served next to inappropriate and disturbing content by one of our partners. We employ safeguards to keep digital advertising from appearing next to offensive content and have agreements in place with our partners to strictly adhere to our brand safety guidelines." Okay, so where are they talking about? So they're talking about the center advertisements potentially funded by U.S. tax dollars also appeared on the channels promoting North Korean propaganda. The Centers for Disease Control, Department of Transportation, Customs and Border Protection, Veteran Affairs, and the U.S. Coast Guard Academy had ads on the channels as well. So, meanwhile, ads from the Washington Post and New York Times appeared on far-right and conspiracy channels like Black Pigeon Speaks, and some run by InfoWars, which is obviously Alex Jones's company. Okay, well, they also decided to add in Jimmy Dore with the white nationalists and the Nazis and all these smears. What do they call it? White nationalists, Nazis, pedophilia, and conspiracy theories. So which one did CNN call Jimmy Dore? Was it the Nazis? Was it the pedophilia? Was it the conspiracy theories? Or North Korean propaganda? Well, this is what CNN said about Jimmy. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore show channel, a far left. Oh my God, it sounds like Bill O'Reilly's talking. You remember when Bill O'Reilly, if you played the drinking game watching Bill O'Reilly on Fox, far left, you'd be dead. He said it 100 million times in 1 hour. Jimmy Dore. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore show channel, a far left YouTube channel that peddles conspiracy theories, such as the idea that Syria chemical weapon attacks are hoaxes. So they're basically saying that suggesting that the Syria chemical weapons attack are hoaxes is somehow a conspiracy theory, or somehow makes you akin to white nationalists, or I don't know, white nationalists, Nazis, this and this. So Jimmy Dore, and not just Jimmy Dore, by the way, Kyle Kalinske, Lee Camp, Max Blumenthal, myself, have been pointing at the fact that America started bombing Syria before there was even an investigation into whether there was indeed was chemical weapons used in Doma, because there were accounts from doctors and others on the ground that there were not chemical weapons used, and people were suffering from asthma attacks and other things, and that the first person to yell out chemical weapons was actually a white helmet, which is funded by the U.S. government. The white helmets are funded by the U.S. government. So Jimmy on his channel has basically been pointing out and saying, where is the evidence that Assad gassed his people? And pointing out the fact that it doesn't even make any sense. Why would Assad gas his people? Because Syrian government, Assad, and the insurgents were at the point of negotiating to end the war, because Assad has already basically won the war. The Syrian government under President Assad has taken back much of the land that was captured by insurgents. So Jimmy, for pointing out that this is unproven speculation and that the United States once again went in and started bombing other countries like Syria, he's painted by CNN. Let me show you one more time. It's kind of astounding that they even wrote this, but they called Dore. Ads also appeared on the Jimmy Dore Show channel, a far-left YouTube channel that peddles conspiracy theories, such as the idea that Syrian chemical weapon attacks are hoaxes. Well, once again, to this day, to this moment, 6 o'clock p.m. East Coast, I have not seen any evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people, or that these were indeed chemical weapons attacks. You literally had the Defense Secretary, Mattis, saying right before they started dropping bombs on Syria. So the day before, when asked, do you have definite evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people? He said they didn't. So that from the day before that they didn't have the evidence to the day after, all of a sudden they have slam dunk, inconvertible proof that Assad gassed his people. By the way, the chemical weapons inspectors hadn't even gotten in to Doma before the United States dropped over 100 Tomahawk missiles on Syria. And Jimmy Dore, not just Jimmy Dore, but Jimmy and Kyle Kalinske and Lee Camp and Max Blumenthal and Rania Kalek and many, many others, including myself, we're conspiracy theories because we basically said, show us the evidence. It's this old school form of journalism where you don't just regurgitate propaganda fed to you by the United States government and U.S. intelligence agencies. Instead of regurgitating propaganda, we ask for evidence. Because this is what led to the Iraq War. Dick Cheney, Richard Armitage, Donald Rumsfeld, George Tenet, and all those gang of brainiacs circling George W. Bush were basically just feeding the New York Times, feeding the Washington Post, feeding Fox News, feeding CNN with basically false intelligence. And then CNN, MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post just regurgitated it. And you have that again in 2018. We haven't learned anything. But now the new component is now they're trying to basically, it's an insult on your intelligence, really. They're trying because more and more people are starting to wake up. Independent media is exploding. Jimmy's channel is taking off, has been taking off. I think when I was at the Young Turks, Jimmy was still like 150,000 or something like that. Now it's over 300,000 subscribers. His Patreon channel is blowing up. He has sold out shows around the country, and more people are starting to tune in to people like Jimmy. I hope more and more people start to tune in to people like me as we try to launch this network, hopefully this summer. More and more people are tuning into Lee Camp. More and more people are tuning into Kyle Kalinske and Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report and Jamarl Thomas of the Progressive Soapbox and many others. So what does CNN do? Conspiracy theorists, people who don't just regurgitate the government line, people that don't just regurgitate unproven propaganda, we're now conspiracy theorists. And what was astounding to me is last week I watched an interview with Wolf Blitzer and Senator Rand Paul. And Rand Paul, I disagree with him on the majority of things, but on war, he's generally smart. And Rand Paul was basically saying everything I just said. I haven't seen any evidence that Bashar al-Assad gassed his people. If there is evidence, they haven't provided it to me, a United States senator. Why would Bashar al-Assad gas his people? He's basically won the war. And you know what Wolf Blitzer said to him? Because Wolf Blitzer, oh, bless his heart. I met him in person. He's actually a nice person, but he's a fucking stenographer for the government. Wolf Blitzer says, Senator, are you trying to say that the intelligence is flawed? Like, people at CNN and Wolf Blitzer, they think their jobs as quote-unquote journalists is simply to repeat what U.S. government sources tell them. But that's not journalism, of course. That's just kind of public relations and stenography. When you just repeat and try and dress up as news what the U.S. government tells you, you're not doing journalism because you're not actually looking at it with scrutiny. You're not investigating whether it's true. You're just regurgitating it. So Wolf Blitzer says to Rand Paul, wait a minute, Senator, are you trying to say that the intelligence might be flawed? Ding, 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 ding. And also, you know, Jimmy, God bless him. I love him. I don't agree with him on every single thing he says or everything he covers. Sure, he doesn't agree with me on every single thing I do. But it's a very dangerous territory when someone like Jimmy Dore is in CNN articles being, you know, very subtly linked in the same conversations with Alex Jones, with, quote, you know, very radical extremist conservative channels. Channels that literally come up with conspiracy theories about, you know, Sandy Hook was a hoax. And, you know, all the nonsense that Alex Jones has come out with over the last few years that is dangerous. And also, let's not forget, people like Alex Jones incite violence. They incite violence. They incite this hysteria, you know, get up in arms, get your arms. So it's very dangerous when CNN, who, by the way, they are actually the conspiracy theorists because they are passing unproven fantasies off as news. What do you call a conspiracy theory? I call it speculated fantasy. Unverified fantasy. Well, when CNN just reports as fact Bashar al-Assad gassed his people and that there was a chemical weapons attack before the chemical weapons inspectors even got into the area where supposed chemical weapons were released. What do you call that? You call that reporting, or, let me hear it, a conspiracy theory? I call that a conspiracy theory, and I call what Jimmy is doing. Jimmy, by the way, who himself, I'm just reporting what he says. He calls himself a jack-off comedian on YouTube. Jimmy, a jack-off comedian on YouTube, is literally doing more investigation and looking with more scrutiny than a multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate, CNN. Lee Camp doing more investigation and reporting than CNN. Kyle Kulinski, Jamarl Thomas, myself, others, looking at things more critically and investigating things more than CNN. So what's next? What's next? If I break a story, let's say on the EPA cooking up science to declare water in Flint safe, or if I break a story on a nuclear waste site endangering the lives of people in St. Louis or other places, and Bill Gates being the largest shareholder in that those nuclear waste sites, and corruption involved with that. Am I going to be a conspiracy theorist because I'm reporting that the EPA is cooking up science? It seems to me CNN is now calling people who call out government lies and government corruption conspiracy theorists. But when you have places like CNN who have this large microphone, basically, I mean, that's defamation. You don't have to be a lawyer. They defamed Jimmy Dore. And let me see if he's responded to my text. I doubt it. No, not yet. They defamed Jimmy Dore by calling him a conspiracy theorist, linking him with the likes of Alex Jones. They defamed him. You know what? if CNN wants to attack Jimmy on the merits, if CNN wants to write an article attacking him for his views on the TPP or attacking his views on American imperialism or whatever, criticizing him on the merits, that's fair game. Jimmy and I sure criticize CNN. If they want to do it in return, by all means. But when you lie and when you relegate people like Jimmy to conspiracy theorists, that's a different story. If it makes you a conspiracy theorist to point out United States history, the fact that the United States has continually gone into places without any verified intelligence, that these places attacked us or bombed people, if that makes me a conspiracy theorist, then I am a conspiracy theorist. Because really, what they are trying to define as conspiracy theory, wait for it, is actually a process. It's this old process. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, called journalism. Journalism is demanding evidence. Journalism is demanding facts before we engage in groupthink and demanding, what is your evidence for war? What is your evidence for attacking another country? What is your evidence from endangering the lives of other human beings? Evidence, evidence, evidence. That's now being defined as conspiracy theory. So if I'm keeping it real, I don't know what Jimmy's going to do. I haven't spoken with him. I hope he sues the hell out of CNN. There's also the tiny little fact, CNN did not reach out to Jimmy Dore before they published this story. And as someone who's had defamation and horrible things written about me that weren't true, and when those authors didn't reach out to me to get a comment, that's kind of like what you learn in Journalism 101 class. Reach out to both sides. You know, they didn't reach out to Jimmy. So Jimmy, if they did, would have basically told you what I'm telling you, would have told them what I'm telling you. Dude, all I'm saying is there's no evidence and the chemical weapons inspectors didn't even go in to inspect before we bombed Syria.